Hey internet, so this is a resource management video on building characters. So I think it's for new players, but I guess old players can watch this video too. Maybe you'll pick up some tips and tricks, who knows. So in terms of resources, you are limited by, first of all, your resin. So once a day you've got 160 resin to work with. I wish they would bump that up to 240 to make it in line with Star Rail. However, that's not what we're trying to talk about today. So that's one resource that you are limited to. Now if you're building characters,
the same as I remember.
the first question some players may ask is, should I build one character vertically, or should I spread my resources across multiple characters? I think if you're in the beginning of your play, like of Genshin Impact, I would say try and spread it out just a little bit. As soon as you
wine tastes the
wish
same.
for your favorite character, then I would say build that character vertically, invest all your resources into your favorite character. So in the beginning in your journey, when you're learning the ropes, learning like how to play Genshin Impact, and you're just like in Mondstadt learning things for the first time, your team's gonna be very weak, of course. Everyone starts out from the ground up. So you build your Amber and your Kaya. So Kaya, Amber, Lisa. So, you build your free characters, you build them up to a reasonable level. If you like these characters and you want to take them up to the highest level, that's okay too. But when you start wishing, and when you wish for your favorite character, then I would say invest your resources into that character, because you're probably going to be using that character the most. Okay, so in the beginning, go for horizontal investment. You may be spreading yourself a little bit thin, and then once you picked your favorite character, build it vertically, invest vertically into your character. And then if you're in the mid game, I would say mid game, if you don't have two teams for the Spiral Abyss, if you want like some Primo Gems from Spiral Abyss, I personally don't enjoy the Spiral Abyss. I just do whatever on it, and I do it one shot. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I just leave. Just because I know that Spiral Abyss is a time sink, and there are not enough hours in a day for me to do other things. So if you want to get some free Primo Gems, so this is the Spiral Abyss. Maybe I'll make a video on how to get there. Actually, I think like there's a lot of content creators that made a video on how to get there, so I don't need to. So you get Primo Gems from here, right? Now, okay. So if you want to do the higher floors, you need two teams. So you got your first half and your second half, so you need two teams. Now in that case, I would say build one team first. So don't overspread your resources, because then you'll have no resources for both teams, and then you just got like a kind of like well, you just got two teams that are weak. So just focus on one team in the beginning. So first of all, build your DPS, then build your supports, then build your either sub DPS or your secondary support, and then build a healer last. Why last? Well, if you can like kill the enemy before they can kill you, then I guess you don't need a healer. That's my logic. So it would probably be better to invest in your DPS first, your support, your sub DPS or secondary support, or a reactor or applicator. So like it adds an element for your main DPS to react to, and your support either to protect your DPS or to buff them in some kind of way. Okay, and then build a healer last. Alright.
Should we really be off work
And then
this
once
early?
you've built your first team, then
There's
you can
still a
move on
lot
to the
left to
second
do.
team and rinse and repeat. DPS, support, sub DPS or applicator, and then finally a healer. Alright. Now, is there an overfarming situation? I think overfarming can occur, like for example, I've got, I think, like 9,000 Matsutake. Just because I hardly ever make dishes with it. But in terms of character materials, I think it's hard for most players to overfarm for character materials. Just because it's like the things are very specific in what you need. So, for example, like, okay, so these are all your character materials, right? I personally don't think you can overfarm them unless you specifically farm every single thing. I mean, there are like some rare players that play Genshin Impact for 6 hours a day and do that. I am not one of those. I would say the most valuable resources is your weapon bullets, your ores. In terms of character materials, just farm them when you need to build a character. In terms of food materials, you can farm them, I guess, but you don't really need to. Okay. In terms of books and resources, so heroes' wits, you can never have enough of those, so feel free to farm as many heroes' wits as you want. In terms of boss materials, I think there's a certain limit. Like, I don't know the numbers exactly, but if we go to our character archive, so there's like a certain number of characters in each region, right? So you would just multiply that number by the amount of weekly bosses to get your materials. So I think at a certain point there's no reason to farm weekly bosses anymore unless you're trying to get the weapon bullets. So that's probably your only reason to farm weekly bosses, even though you've reached that limit of upgrading your characters. I would say farm the new bosses because they drop the new weapon bullets, which is more beneficial. And then whatever's left, you can farm later on. In terms of world bosses, farm them when you need them. Books, yeah, farm them when you need them. I think resources, it's situational. It's a case-by-case basis. I would say most of the time you would just farm them as you need them. The only materials that you would need to farm constantly is your ores, your weapon bullets, because you need both of these, because if you're a free-to-play character, you don't have much options in terms of weapons. Now, we haven't touched on artifacts. So, my philosophy on artifacts is build one set for a character. So, okay, so you may want to build a set for every character, so a specific set for every character, which is probably the better option at the moment because they don't have artifact loadouts. Maybe we'll get it in the next 5 years. I mean, we've been asking for some quality life changes and it took them 4 years to bring it to us, so maybe in the next 5 years we'll get that artifact loadout. But since we don't have that option, it's probably best to farm artifact sets for individual characters. Now you may want to, so if you are low on resources, you may want to share artifact sets, but you may lose that artifact set and just like be confused on where it is. So what I mean by that is, like, as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of random artifact sets, and if you're like swapping between characters, it does become a hassle, even though you got a search function now, like, which is better, but still it is a little bit of hassle to do that. I mean, the search function is pretty easy now. It's just like you pick your artifact set and then you type in your, like, if it's locked, max level, unequipped, and you know, you can find it that way. So it's not that bad, but I do recommend farming a set for every character. Okay, so that's resources. So weapons, again, I would say if you're free to play, I would recommend you get as many free to play weapon bullets and then craft your weapons as possible. I think over time you can R5 your weapons. If you're in the beginning of your journey, just have one of each type and then work your way up. So have your R1s, your refine 1 weapons, and then as you get more and more weapon bullets, you can refine it. In terms of 5-star weapons, if you're free to play, don't refine that weapon unless you are specifically making a character more powerful. So for example, if I got a Skyward Harp, if I got another one, I would just build another Skyward Harp instead of refining it. Because first of all, 5-star weapons are super rare from the standard banner, assuming that you're free to play. If you are a spender, I guess you can lose the 50 a lot and get some weapons. But if you're free to play, these are super valuable and you shouldn't refine them unless they're super niche. So a super niche weapon, so in my case, would be the Amos bow, because that weapon is only used for Ganyu. So there's no reason to like have it on anyone else because no one else can use that weapon. So right, I forgot. It only shows weapons that you've got, not weapons that you don't have, which is a shame. But the point being, if it's a super niche weapon,
so nice
like
to
specifically only for that character, that's the only reason why you should refine it. If it is a very generic weapon, then I would keep it at R1. Okay, so we talked about weapons, we talked about artifact sets, build one for each character. So heroes wits, we talked about that. Farm as you need them. Primo gems, you can never have enough. You always want primo gems to wish for characters. Same for fates, I mean that goes without saying. I think it really depends on the playstyle of the player. Like, if you're a resource hoarder, and you're farming every single day, then of course
Stabilize.
you would have no problems with your resource management. If you're a new player and you don't have many resources at all, I would say farm what you can, but don't over farm, because you only have a limited amount of resources anyways per day. So resources reset every single day, unless it's a weekly resource. Also, you've got a limited time in terms of physical time, like you only got so many hours in a day. So unless you're playing Genshin Impact for hours at a time, which I guess in the beginning when it's all new and stuff, it might be fun to do that, but you may experience burnout, so don't over farm. So just farm as you need to. Don't mindlessly farm unless you need to. Okay. Alright. What else have we talked about? So we're just sort of wrapping things up. In terms of food, should you be farming food? I think once you get the achievement and you unlock the auto cook, so like you just cook the dish for how many amount of time, like sometimes you just need to cook it 5 times, sometimes you need to cook it 20 times. Once you've done that and unlock the auto cook option, I would say there's no reason to do it, because you hardly ever eat food in the game anyways. I think if you have a healer, you don't really need food. And if you got like a buffer or like a applicator character, like having those plus critical rate and critical damage, food doesn't really help that much. And you can't even use food in the Spiral Abyss anyway, so it's like, and so there's no real point in doing that, and most overworld bosses are super easy, so there's no real reason to eat food. Like, I think in the beginning, I guess, if you're struggling with bosses because you're low level, I mean, sure, but in the beginning, you're probably going to have low level food anyways. So there's no real reason to eat food or craft food other than doing your weekly battle pass. Alright, I think we covered everything. You can't farm gadgets, quests, you can't really farm quests, it's kind of like a one-time thing. Lucky coins, right, that is farmable. If you like TCG, so it's not really important. I mean, I would say just ignore it, because I don't enjoy TCG, but if you like the trading card game, you can come here and do that, I guess. So you can farm lucky coins for the shop, and you can buy like different cards and stuff. That's just some side note. I digress. I think I'll end the video now. Thanks for watching. Hope you had a great day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, ring the bell, turn on all notifications. Leave a comment below if this was helpful. I know most of the stuff is pretty obvious and it was designed for new players. Alright, become a member if you want to, drop a super thanks if you want to. Until next time, see ya.